in Nigeria, the country's first private sector commodities exchange, AFEX, has announced the reopening of its $240 million asset-backed commercial paper. Now, the proceeds of that issuance will be used by AFEX to provide pre-qualified agro processors with low-cost working capital in order to help them purchase commodities required for their production processes at an agreed price, a move the firm says will help to bridge the funding gap between lenders and borrowers in this sector. Now, the new funding is AFEX's second in a 3-year commercial paper program that started in the fourth quarter of last year. This round seeks to raise an additional $175 million for processors who are unable to borrow in the commercial paper markets. AFEX security is backed by the commodities, serving as the credit enhancement in the transaction. Well, let's get more on that from Ayodeji Balogun. He is the CEO of AFEX. Great to have you with us on the show today, Mr. Balogun. Now, of course, let's start off with the funding. You say that this funding will be used to help stabilize Nigeria's agriculture sector, mainly, as we mentioned, by offering agro processors in the country low-cost financing. So give us some insight into how the firm structures the financing that it offers, and certainly how it helps support players in the agriculture sector in Nigeria overall.
Thank you for having me. So agriculture is a large part of the continent. In Nigeria, it's 25% of our GDP, but only gets about 5% of credit to the private sector. This disproportionate share of capital to a sector that is growing and is being the most resilient in the country is something that we feel needs to be addressed. We see a funding gap of about 2 trillion naira to the agricultural sector. And we constantly worry about how to bridge this gap and particularly ease the transition from commodities to capital. One of the things that we've launched innovatively so last year was the asset-backed commercial paper. And what this allows is to allow tier 2 corporate players to be able to tap and access capital from the capital market. We're excited about this launch, and now we are raising $175 million after a series that was successful in Q4 and the first issue that happened in 2021.
Now, of course, this will be the second in a 3-year commercial paper program that AFEX started in 2021. Last time, you said you raised about $65 million. This round, as we mentioned, seeks to raise an additional $175 million. How did investors respond to the previous round, and what are your expectations this time around?
So in the last round, we were actually oversubscribed by 20%. Investors particularly liked for two reasons. First, it gave them above inflation yield, which was good for balancing portfolio. Second, it also gave them an impact-related asset class, an asset class that actually solved the critical problem in the sector. So considering ESG requirements, we actually did get a lot of buy-in across several tiers of investors. We also expect very strong, and we have a very robust pipeline. We do think that will be received just as warmly, and as well that this asset class will, on this round, live to its true potential to solve a big critical gap in the financing fabric of the country.
Of course, AFEX is a first for Nigeria. And last we checked, the platform had about 250,000 farmers. You also trade crops ranging from maize, soya bean, rice, cocoa, amongst others. Give us some insight into the growth the company has seen so far.
It's been tremendous. So if you look at the last 3 years, our revenues has grown by about 30, in a multiple of 30. So we've grown from, to this year, in 2021, we did a turnover of about $200 million. And we expect to hit about $600 million by this year in 2022. So we're growing about 3 times year on year. We expect to sustain that pace of growth for another 3-4 years. And this is just precisely because we are in an untapped territory. It's almost over a decade since a commodities exchange has gone live with active trades on the continent in Africa. So we see an emerging and very strong and large opportunity pool where we've picked our tent. And we have successfully proven a model for commodities exchanges to actually scale across Africa. So part of our growth strategy is actually to expand to a few other countries over the next 3-4 years.
Well, tell us a bit more about that, because you had planned to expand into countries such as Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Uganda, also Tanzania on this side of the world, rather. What's the latest on that?
So we did launch successfully in Kenya, and we've done well over 5,000 metric tons in commodity traded in Kenya. And as we're speaking now, that we're getting into the planting season in the major hub in Kenya, and we plan to provide input financing to about 15,000 farmers. This is, first time in that market where a player is bringing a complete end-to-end solution, right from financing the farmers with the right training, the right education, access to storage, and access to market in one bundle. So we've seen tremendous uptake, and then there's actually huge potential to grow in the region. We will be transiting over the next sort of 3-4 years into Cote d'Ivoire, markets like Republic of Benin, markets like Uganda and Tanzania in East Africa as well, and then spread from these hubs across a few other African countries.
Well, we'll certainly be watching. Many thanks for joining us on the show today, Mr. Balogun. That, of course, is Ayodeji Balogun, CEO of AFEX. Well, let's move on now. In the last